Hello, and welcome back to yet another episode of the WhizzbangBAM podcast. I'm your host, Brad Goodall. This is episode, I don't know which episode it is. They'll put that in. They'll digitize my voice later and make that happen.
Sure.
I'm not going to give you the bio up front because I'm going to let you define it. But in the studio, in the Nashville Hang Chill Spot Airbnb today, we have Michael Corcoran. Welcome, my friend, to the podcast.
Thanks, Brad. Good to be here.
Tell me, so I can put it in parentheses on my little notes here, what it is you do.
So I work
within the industry.
Sure. I work at a company called mtheory. I am one of the heads of marketing there and kind of work with different managers from different genres to help them with their business. And that can take many different forms. But so really kind of help them with anything.
Music marketing. What does that mean just in a more specific way when somebody says they need help with their music marketing? What does that mean? Socials? What's the first thing you grab to word association-wise with that?
I don't know. There's not one specific word I'd say. I think it's kind of, for me, it's like an all-encompassing sort of holistic look at how somebody's art gets out into the universe. So for us, again, depending on the artist, depending on the manager, that can be socials, it can be touring, it can be press, it can be, all different things, depending on what the artist is comfortable with, what the medium they're most comfortable with, those types of things. So really trying to, accentuate what they do well and then help them in places where they may need a little assistance.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like some of that's involved with like what an artist is comfortable with, because certain people might be okay with like the daily vlog style approach to interacting with fans or whatever, and other people might feel like that's like a little bit invasive, maybe for no reason. It's definitely like finding your own personality, sketching it out what you're comfortable with, and then just running with that, and maybe just kind of dabbling with the extra stuff to round it out.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now, like so many artists, like TikTok is the thing, right? But I would say that most of the artists that I work with do not do TikTok or don't like themselves personally do it. Somebody maybe helps them with rounding out the content, like putting official music content on there, but they aren't necessarily comfortable doing it themselves.
Yeah, I brought TikTok up on this podcast a bunch, and I've asked a bunch of people this, and I'm still kind of reckoning with it myself, just trying to get comfortable with the platform. But for the most part, I feel like it's so wide open that it's like scary. As far as you can you don't have to be super direct. Let's say you have a new song coming out. I've seen people kind of put the new song as like a bed while they're doing something like an everyday chore. Yeah. And then it's like almost like a subliminal approach to hyping a new song. You know what I mean? Like there's just no rules. And I think that's like kind of intimidating and confusing.
Definitely intimidating. Definitely fun. I think particularly for younger artists that are very comfortable with like, I will say that I think older artists tend to be less comfortable with like being too like showy or too markety with their stuff, to go back to our word. But, I think younger kids are like totally comfortable with like, I'm going to pimp this out however I can. And if I'm cooking while I'm doing, whipping up with WhizzbangBAM. And oh, by the way, in the background is the new John R. Miller singer.
That's right.
We're going to put this on TikTok.
Dude, it really works. And it's almost like the word is not cringe. Okay. It's more like, but the slightly more embarrassing the behavior, or like the more willing you are to like kind of make a fool of yourself, you can kind of, but that to me always felt like a little weird. Like say you have a new song that you've worked, 4 months on and you're trying to promote it. And now you kind of have to like act the fool on your iPhone to try to promote it. And I don't know if it takes away from the music if people still find the song and then they forget about the content being a little bit foolish. Maybe that's what we're hoping for, is that you just find the song first.
I think so. And there's still like not a tremendously large track record of artists that have truly had sort of like the bedrock of a career going so far. So
no,
I mean, we'll see. I think that's the thing, is it is wide open right now and people are using it in all sorts of creative ways. And I think it's pretty amazing. I mean, I can find myself going down, whichever rabbit hole I choose to at a given time. But it's certainly an interesting platform.
I want to say, I guess I want to ask, do you feel like it's translating to ticket sales? Are people showing up because, let's see, you have a 2 or 3 viral videos from TikTok. Does that mean you can drive 5 hours away from your hometown and play a sold-out show?
I think it depends. So I think for some artists, yes. I think there's a certain segment of, I think particularly female-leaning artists, you know, whether that's like a pop star male or even like there's certainly like a lot of heartfelt like female emo singers right now that are sort of the rage at pop, and like, you know, some of them don't really have any more than 2 or 3 songs out, and yet they're selling out clubs and things like that. So I do think it's translating. Now, whether that will be sort of like, I'm going to go see that person one time, or if it's like, I'm going to go see them every time they come to town, I don't think we know just yet.
We don't have the data yet on how
Not
TikTok
fully.
is building a fan base.
Yeah.
All right, I'm fine to leave that open. I think positively down the line, future-wise, I think it's probably all a good thing.
It is. And I think, you know, people are connecting with music there in ways that, you know, we've been unable to connect with them for years, like because of whatever reason. I mean, there's a lot of distractions, but
Right. We've kind of been future focused with this conversation thus far. I kind of want to go back. You used to manage a band called Guster. Is that true? Or worked with?
I worked with the band. I did not manage. A guy named Dalton Sim still manages them to this day. Amazing. One of my mentors.
How is Guster? I only knew like a couple of songs way back when, but how's Guster doing?
Guster's, I think, doing pretty well. They're still kicking.
I always love the name, Guster. It's a windy, flowy name.
I mean, there have been many on the, I think the release of the Keep It Together record. We did a big release show in Boston at City Hall, which is like the ugliest building. If anybody's ever been there, it's like the ugliest building in Boston. But there were like probably 50,000 people out there, and the mayor introduces the band, and he's like, "Ladies and gentlemen, Guster," like with all the emphatic, you know, excitement that you could.
Did anybody go up to him and like whisper in his ear?
No, but it became like
no,
and then it became like a gag, and we had like banners made, like all sorts of. The band really leans into that.
You got to play into the meme. That's really the only way out with this stuff. If you do, like we were talking about, like just the behavior you have to deal with on the internet. If you get embarrassed or if fans catch you, let's call it lacking, they catch you slipping, you have to almost just embrace it and make T-shirts. That's the only way really out of it. Would you ever advise somebody in a formal meeting doing what you do? Like, well, we caught you, you know, they caught you doing something pretty embarrassing. What we're going to do is print 2,000 T-shirts and you're going to sell them at your next show.
And get a website. Yeah, totally.
You would say that?
Why not? I mean, again, I think if the band is somewhat self-deprecating, yes, for sure.
Right. You kind of have to start your career on a self-deprecating basis. That way, when you get to the top, it was always your arc, and people expect it from you, and you're safe. You can kind of do. There's people at the top who kind of navigate that. I would say Tyler, the Creator, kind of gets away with.
Dave Grohl.
Yeah. There's a lot of artists like that who kind of can get away with being a little bit foolish, and everybody just goes, "Oh, that's just who they are."
Yeah. And I feel like it allows them to be more creatively free too, like, because you know, like whatever, you don't need ever quite know, you're like, what is this, like, yeah, I like it.
That's super interesting.
But anyways, yeah, the Guster guys, I actually ended up booking, so even backing up a little before that, when I was in college, I booked shows, and they were one of the bands that I brought to college. I had seen them in New York City at this club called the Wetlands, and went up to them afterwards. I was like, I want to get you to play at my college, and they're like, okay. And so ended up doing that, became friends with them. After I graduated, I ended up going on the road with them, just kind of selling merch and moving around some gear. And
is that how you like kind of found your way into the business?
It is. I ended up spending, so what started was like I was going to take, when I graduated college, I took a job in the financial sector for 3 months, hated it, quit, and then was just like, they were like, why don't you just come on the road, instead of taking your summer off, like just come out in the fall with us. And so that ended up being a job. And by the end of that tour, I was basically the road manager, and then getting into production management. And so for about 7 years, I worked with them as their tour manager, tour accountant, production manager, lighting designer, lighting engineer. So
that's actually a really interesting storyline, that like there might be people who don't really know how to get in. So let's say they're not. Are you a musician yourself? I mean, do you you make records on your own?
I do not. I grew up playing classical violin through high school, and then I did not pursue it beyond that. But I am not really talented when it comes to the
I'm
musical
sure
front.
I'm sure you were great.
I am not being modest. Trust me.
I just mean in a general sense of somebody being like on the outside, but they are deeply passionate about music.
I do love music. I've loved music since I was a kid, for sure.
But like you entered the whole system via essentially just going up to a band and saying, I would love to book you a show someplace.
Yes.
As simple as that.
As simple
and here
as
you
that.
are in Nashville. How many years later?
I've been in Nashville for 18 years.
Wow. That's a really interesting story. That one meeting changed your whole trajectory. Does that feel heavy to think about?
I think about it often, actually.
Oh, really?
I've had many sort of touch points because of different things, like different like sort of leaps of faith that I took throughout my life, like just randomly. Like my brother was also into me. He's about 18 months younger than me, and we would just go to shows constantly. And just, like it's so silly to think about now, but we would just go up to the bands afterward, because primarily small clubs and things like that, but just like tell them how much we enjoyed it, or
and they were bands who wanted to make new fans, so they were more than happy to kick it and see what's going on.
Yeah.
Where was the scene you came up in though?
I grew up in New Jersey, so it was like in New York City was kind of where I was seeing most of my shows.
Oh man!
But I was driving. I was like a big Dave Matthews Band fan, so I was driving up and down the East Coast for them.
Going to Virginia and all that.
Going to Virginia, doing the thing.
Going to frat house parties. Somebody just sent me just recently sent me a picture of. I'm from West Virginia. Obviously, you know that, but like Morgantown. There's a picture of Dave Matthews Band playing a like Phi Kappa whatever backyard frat in 1994, and it's obviously a blurry film photo, and it's like, I mean, he might be playing for 200 or 300 people, but like that really is the Ascent, though.
Yeah,
I mean, you might have been one of those people driving around catching a show.
It was crazy seeing, and early on there were a lot of bands that I was able to see like before they kind of became something big, and so.
Would you have been around for CBGB's, or was that already?
Yeah, no, I went to CBGB's.
When did CBGB's close?
Oof, I don't know. Early 2000s.
It turned into like a John Varvatos clothing store
for a minute, and then I think that's gone now too.
Oh, really?
That building has been.
They could have just left it as CBGB's. Why did they do that? That's super interesting. Anybody else you saw that you really loved in the New York scene at that time? That you went up to and said hello?
Man, Jeff Buckley. Got to see Jeff Buckley before his passing, and I never went up and talked to him, but got to see him perform, and that was a pretty magical.
What venue?
It was at the Wetlands. So I ended up pretty much posting up at the Wetlands like 3 nights a week, because I ended up getting to know the door guy there, and he would just let me in. He would list me for any show that I really wanted to come to, and so like so many bands like. And I didn't see them, but Oasis played. I go back and look at some of my old calendars from there, and I'm like, holy crap. Like some of the amazing talent that was going through that room at the time. And like Fish played there.
Wetlands.
It was like the hippie joint. So Fish was that was their big early stomping grounds in New York City. Buckley played there a bunch. Dave Matthews. There were all these like Rusted Root, these hippie
Rusted
bands.
Root, yeah, of
everything. I mean, I could go Edwin McCain, like all these weird like.
I don't know them as much. I remember Rusted Root from the one song that is still like technically a meme now.
Send Me on My Way.
Yeah, that one.
It's on like a bank commercial the other day. I'm like, what?
They're still getting getting the pennies flowing in from that song. That song has this character to it that is so movie trailer esque.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? I can totally see why that song is still just coming back around and around and around.
That flute.
It's the flute? Is that what you said?
There's like a little flute part in that.
We might have to pull it up, but they would yank it from this video. We wouldn't be able to listen to it.
Don't we get 30 seconds? I don't know.
Is that what you would know? How long do you get to use a song that
in
doesn't
news?
belong?
I don't know if this qualifies as a news organization, but typically you can.
Yes, this is WhizzbangBAM News LLC. Dude, thank you for stopping by, Michael Corcoran, master of walking up to a merch table and changing his destiny. What a great story!
Right.
Thanks for sharing it with us.
You're welcome.
Thanks, man.